Hello, welcome to the Universal Truth Podcast. My name is Jennifer Krause, and I am welcomed by Dr. Austin Davis of Life Chiropractic. It is our mission to speak truth from the heart and to share that with others. Join me in this episode as I ask more questions with Dr. Davis to find out how he works, and we talk about trauma, birth, generational stuff, and past lives, how it's stored in our body, and how to get clear and connected. I'm Jennifer Krause. I'm welcomed by Dr. Austin of Life Chiropractic here in Missoula, Montana. This is our second recording. I wanted to kind of make this a little separated. So I wanted to go into you specifically working on generational chiropractic care, because I haven't actually heard that used as a way of classifying or honing in on what you do. But I do want to bring up a couple things first.
Please.
I do want to say your qualifications on your website that I read before meeting. I'm really impressed by you being your son's favorite chiropractor.
Get ready for the billboards.
And
voted Missoula's best chiropractor, and I'm putting under it by my 4-year-old.
Yeah. And do you have more than one kid?
No.
Okay. I was wondering. I was like, if you have 2 kids and only one is okay.
No, Ari, our little buddy. Yeah.
And your specialties I really liked.
Yeah.
So I really loved anyone that is hardworking, anyone that is not hardworking, and anyone with a nervous system.
Yes.
I congratulate you on those qualifications and specialties. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, my wife edited the first version of the website, which was just a blank page that says, "Do you have a nervous system? Click here," and it takes you to our scheduling page.
It's brilliant.
It's one of the most beautiful things about chiropractic and what I get to do every day is navigating the sort of modern day politics of life. And I hope I say this correctly, but in this office, everyone, thankfully, identifies as a nervous system. It's if you have a nervous system, I can help you. And that's it. That's
great.
And we do address all the idiosyncrasies of life that have got you to this point, what you support or don't, or whatever. It does have a framework on how the body expresses life. There's an amazing doctor named Dr. Bruce Lipton, who does the biology of belief, right?
Yeah,
I've had the honor of sharing a stage with him. And
oh, wow.
Oh, he's,
I love him.
I've known him for a long time, and the concept of bucking the trend that cells are unidirectional and it's just heart cells created does heart things, and liver cells and brain, and it's all very outwardly, and that it's multi-directional, and you take in electrical and chemical input, which is something as simple as thought or someone's vibrational energy. So the way you think about things, see things, the way you choose to decide how other people think about things or do things, impacts your cellular expression, impacts your expression of life. So I wanted to find a way to create a completely open, inclusive experience where you're a nervous system, right? You're a system of neurology, and knowing that everyone is that. Here, it allows me to focus on the one thing I'm really good at.
Yeah. As you were talking, and now that I know that you know who Bruce Lipton is, I wonder if generational is limiting. What about multi-dimensional?
Let's look at it this way. Everything, including what I'm saying, is limiting, because until we have a podcast where we just sit like this, and we have to use some expression of like auditory and hand jet, like, so there's, which has limitation.
Right.
So therefore, yes, everything we say is limiting in one capacity. Not everything we do, because there's ways of, I think, potentially freeing ourselves from limitations through action. Not even just physical action, but the thought process or meditation. But
Right.
verbally, yes, the things we say will be limiting.
Okay, so before we go off on a whole other tangent,
Yeah.
um,
So good.
Dr. Austin did adjust me before we started, and I wanted to talk about that and kind of and bring it up, and to kind of, let's see if I can do this in a short way of bringing up my experience of knowing that we store stuff in our body, not just trauma from this lifetime, but generational, right? When I was working through stuff with my scoliosis, straightening it out, I saw my mother's trauma and my grandmother's trauma, like in visions, and then physical, my nervous system like was reacting to that. And also other lifetimes too. So, which I did not believe any of that stuff until I experienced it. But when to now bring it to here, when you were working on me, and I had visions, I saw visions of me as a baby. You were working over here, the occipital area.
Occiput C1.
Yeah. Okay. And I saw visions of me as a baby sleeping, because the question that you had prompted to ask, or that you asked me, was about my birth story and like how I was born, and that I believe that happened right before that you asked that question. And
so do you remember your birth process?
Yeah. And which is a great way of putting it, right? Do you remember your birth process? Because you're not asking like, oh, what did your parents tell you? It's do you remember? And I did realize it when you said that, and I didn't really remember it, but I did have visions of it as you were working on me after that, and seeing me as a baby after being born, and then I started seeing that generational thing of my mother after she was born, and I mean like right after, and then my grandmother too, and it was like it was the newly born version of us wanted to rest. And it's interesting, right? Because when you give birth, I had 2 kids. So like when you give birth in a hospital, and normally, the first thing they do is like
take the baby
away, and they like want you to scream and like want you to, do all these things. They're like finger or, footprinting you, and there's so much activity, rightly. Well, I don't want to say rightly so, like,
in their world, they're right. They're doing what they're trained to do. And that's a hard little loophole where technically they are doing the right things based on their training.
Right. So to bring that, also, so I had that experience. Obviously, a lot of energy kind of pushed through me because my nervous system reacted to it. And then towards the end, you had me look to the right, and the intuitive hit that I got was you found your voice. Can you explain your experience by working on me, and also, do you get visions and your like intuition, like how that comes to you when you're working on someone? Absolutely. So like my experience, like the experience with me specifically, and then like overall.
Okay, so this may be different than, well, I'm not even going to say you assume the way it's going to go. So the way I address chiropractic and the process of chiropractic and the healing nature of chiropractic and this is limiting, but we're going to say twofold. And I respect the direct clinical nature of chiropractic, that hard bone hitting soft nerve equals dysfunction. And like we talked about, that could be high blood pressure, could be pain, could be all kinds of things. And then I always want to analyze to ensure that the body's communicating properly so it functions properly. There is that component of it. The contributing factors and the complementary component to that is what moved that bone. And we can often directly link it to physical trauma. Sure, physical trauma. And in some regard, everyone's life has physical trauma. Being born is a physical trauma.
Right.
Even a home
Which
birth.
I feel like most people don't realize that.
Well, they don't. And it's unfortunate also because as much as it is a physical trauma, it's not like a handicap or disability, which obviously there are handicaps and disabilities. What I'm saying is my wife gave birth. She then was put on disability at work. And that's training a mother to think that she's disabled. It's I think many states do this, that you apply for disability. And it's like having to verbalize or say like, I'm receiving disability for creating and birthing life is bullshit.
Yeah.
And that creates already, like we were talking about, cellular structures going, yep, something's wrong with me. Like I went through this trauma and now I'm like damaged. It's like, no, you just participated in arguably the most important, impactful thing anyone can do ever. And I do fully and humbly aware that when a woman gets to do that, it's the most important, impactful thing in the universe. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here talking. Right, at all.
Yeah.
We would have fizzled out a long time ago.
Or just be a blob.
Or just a cellular blob. So understanding that physical trauma can move a bone, sure. And I can adjust it back. Plug everything back in, body goes back to being intelligent, great. The non-physical subluxation is, and sure, to some aspect, there's going to be a physical component, but when I mean non-physical, meaning non-injury related or accident or direct trauma, blunt force trauma, or anything like that, is how we try to open those doors for patients respectfully and on their own time. I'll often inadvertently do it just through my intake, my questions, my analysis and exam work. We were talking about a patient who came in recently that clear chart, no injuries, no trauma, no nothing. And through what I do a lot of is it's called applied kinesiology, right? It's muscle testing through nerve testing, but you're activating that neurologic system. And the neurology of the body is incredible. It will hold these impulses from the past, from past lives, from generations of energy that will create the framework of how the body operates and adapts and views the world. So what we were doing is we were doing some basic exam work. Right arm holding strong, left arm was not holding. So what I did, I said, have you had trauma to this area? Not have you had an accident or anything like this, is have you had trauma to this area? Because as we know it, there's male energy, female, there's areas of the body that hold specific energies. And it opened a doorway that, and I try to choose my words very carefully because I'm not a magician, I'm a detective. And it's often said,
can you be both?
I probably can. But in this office, I love that there's no magic to it, because if it was magic, it'd be very challenging to replicate what I'm doing. I like the detective work because it's clue-based. There's clues in the system. Nonverbal. If a patient came in and never said a word, I would uncover as much as I can uncover, as deep as I can get, without a word being spoken, because
Mhm.
there's, it's kind of a harsh saying, but patients lie.
The
system
I was
doesn't.
gonna say, I said this the other day, the body never lies, but
Right.
people do.
Exactly right. And I say it politely. It's
Yeah.
they're not intending to, some do, some intend to deceive because they don't want to face the big sickle over their shoulder.
Right.
So they go, no, I'm fine. It's just a click. And there's a lot going on. But they lie because they're like, no, I'm fine. Because this patient had done everything in the educated book. Amazing self-work and scary self-work and uncomfortable self-work.
Yeah.
And energy really did the right things. And thought she was on the other side of it. That I have put that in a box and set it out to sea and gave it a Viking funeral, and
Yeah.
I did what I need to do to clear that.
Right.
And has lived a beautiful life on the other side of it. But with a simple kinesiological test and a simple question,
Mhm.
have you experienced trauma to this side? It unraveled an entire segment that she thought was gone. That stays there. And I'm saying that's why I have tissues in a room. We cry a lot in this office. And it's beautiful. I mean, it's a shedding of husks, right? We gotta peel some of these layers off.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a fascinating concept that even people doing all the right things on paper that maybe have never had a component like chiropractic, which I don't think most people are going to go, I'm processing some really unsettled shit from my past. I should see my chiropractor. And that's
I do.
Well, when you said it, earlier,
people.
like, I don't hear a lot of chiropractors talk like this. And I said, it's heavy on my heart because this is what chiropractic is. All chiropractic. I want to see a chiropractor on every street corner, like a Walgreens.
Yeah.
There's no competition in my profession. We need a chiropractor on every corner, in every delivery room, in every treatment center, everywhere.
For sure.
Everywhere. And
Yeah.
there needs to be that. So gaining the understanding that you do everything right on paper, process it, and come out of it stronger, more dynamic,
Right.
more expressive, is still only part of the picture. And those little time bombs that sit in the subconscious. One of my mother's best friends was a woman named Debbie Ford, and she did the shadow training was a big thing for her. And if the image of trying to hold beach balls underwater, where you're like, I've gotten really good I've taken courses. I added a third arm to my body. I've studied with masters. I've visualized, I've diagrammed, I've meditated on the best way to hold these beach balls down.
Yeah.
One little wave and they all, right? So you can get really good at the process and still have a significant corridor that needs to be cleared out and addressed that is not a personal, I can do this. And that's a very humbling thing because, again, it's like dropping that ego, dropping that fear, is that this is my scenario. This is my situation. I will get out of it. I may ask for this person to help with the mental, but there needs to be an actual neurologic clear out on an actual structural level.
Right.
Because I've been to some wildly impressive energy healers. And if my system was interfered with on a physical level and that brainstem is choked off, it inhibits the full expression of that. And so that's where chiropractic comes in and addressing some of that generational, metaphysical, multidimensional funk that we sort of hide away in little pockets.
I feel like it's like we need to do different things, not just one thing usually ends up reversing trauma. It's like we do layer by layer by layer, right? And it's not always the same modality that kind of helps us remove the thing. So she did so much work, right? But there were still subtleties that caused a physical thing that you were able to detect because you were the person that she came to right the same at the when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Yeah.
So like it happened when it was meant to happen for her. Does she come back routinely?
This was her first visit.
First visit.
Yeah, so we'll see.
Yeah.
I hope so.
That's awesome.
To touch on your other question of do I visualize or have visions or when adjusting? I don't.
Well,
I visualize sort of an expansive void, just a clear platform.
Yeah. Well, you're channeling that.
Right.
That's you're a clear vessel.
Right.
So you are receiving.
Yes.
From the universe to
yes.
help.
You ever see Star Wars like Lightspeed, where it's like that's what I visualize when I adjust. So
can you tell me like what that's like for you?
Absolutely. And there's a reason for it. And there's a reason for it. I used to visualize very vivid and clear interactions and situations. And it came to me that, like we're talking about limiting factors, is this something I'm constructing? I just didn't know enough of how pure that vision was. Mm-hmm. If this is a truly pure vision and I'm blessed to receive and transfer, or if my ego is getting in the way and going, well, I'm a healer and I'm good at this and I'm gonna, and if that is the case, and it created that seed of what if, and that what if seed, and I'm still working on that, is if there's even a slight chance that I'm creating or manifesting any part of this from my own psyche or ego, it's not fair to the patient.
Right.
And so I've practiced going the other way and going, I will be a hollow vessel, meaning creating an environment where their psyche energy, whether it's ego or not, it's theirs, can transfer through. And I can just sort of be that conduit for the universe that, like I said, those little light speeds.
Yeah.
And it's just whatever that is, I have chosen to not put imagery to it or anything on it or with it. It's just like raw energy, raw power and energy that they can transmute to whatever it needs to become. Is how it's hard to put that like in a TV commercial or like a newspaper ad.
Yeah, well, I wanted to bring it up because I think it's important that other chiropractors, especially any practitioner, really people that work with people, understand that there is there is a way to receive information from patients for them, what's best for them.
Right.
And it's not your thinking brain or the education that you have, which all helps in, determining sometimes depending on how you receive information. Yeah. But just that you are able to express that through you to your patients. And so thank you for your explanation on that question. And I did want to say, so one of the reasons why I asked is because when I was on the table and I was on my back and it was towards the end, I think it's a little bit of a, but I remember I had a vision of, because I receive information from, kind of goes both ways for me. And so I felt you like internally working on me. Like specifically what I saw was my organs. Like I don't know if it's something that you do intentionally, consciously, but it was like you were feeling in my neck, but you were looking at the whole system, like internally, like my organs, like you were connecting all the things. Is that something that is it something that you do?
That's going back to working in the cadaver lab, just understanding the visual framework of the body, the connections that the nerve from the brain to the end organ or muscle or tissue has, and the route that it takes. The reason I say I'm a detective, not a magician, although I can be both, is because it is detective work. There are, in the physical, clinical sense, no mysteries of the body. Sometimes we're convinced that there are, or we're told there are, but through palpation, through kinesiology, through the analysis, we know that if we touch a certain vertebrae or test a certain nerve, it goes to a specific place.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll go the other way and I do organ-based testing to then
Okay, I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, so we'll go the other way. So through kinesiology, we can do, we'll do stomach point, we'll test. And so we can go both ways with that. But in this sense, what we were doing was through the actual palpation and analysis and kinesiology, going, okay, C7 goes to this, T12 goes to this. And to clear myself and visualize, I'm checking that whole route, that whole connection for interference, because if we only address the location, that's symptom-based care. There can be multiple interferences along the pathway. Now, we always check atlas and sacrum. And sacrum, it's fascinating too, because there's the enteric nervous system, and it's this mirror nervous system to the central nervous system. Enteric?
I don't know this.
It's and I'm still learning a lot about this myself. One of my friends, and I'll turn you on to her work, is pretty fascinating in what it's exposing, but it's just basically like a neurologic mirror imaging of the body, where if the second bone of the neck is out to the right, it'll mirror it as like the second bone up from the sacrum. And it's the second largest bundle of like where all the nerve fibers come out, cauda equina and all that. So we're always checking sacrum. Always checking atlas. You've probably heard of craniosacral. Craniosacral. So we're always checking that. But the desired effect is always to clear the interference from the system. And there's some chiropractors, they only adjust one vertebrae, C1. That's it. It's upper cervical care. They'll analyze occiput C1, C2. Anything below that is a compensation. The only true subluxation is atlas.
I mean, that kind of makes sense. I get it.
Oh, it's amazing.
But sometimes you got to hit it from angles, right?
And that's it. And I do upper cervical work, but just not exclusively like some offices do exclusively.
Yeah.
I check atlas every time. I check sacrum every time. We check spiritual metaphysical every time. We also have, the farmer who got kicked by a horse and his ribs. Like, we just got to lay the lumber and set a rib or
whatever they're ready for at that.
Because he's like, I got to get back to work. Like, I will process that later. Like, you just like put my hip back in place because I'm dragging my leg.
Yeah.
And I got to go throw hay bales or something. So it's a sort of a chameleon adaptive process where we can thankfully help all people.
Yeah. Okay. I have some questions. What do you think, what's your professional opinion on what I'm storing in my body? Or how, that's
good. You want to rephrase it?
I was going to, but then I gotta know. So
my professional opinion on what you're storing in your body.
It was present tense. I wanted to change it, like
what you were
with my ego, like what had I been, but I got ing.
Yeah. So. Everyone has a unique tapestry of health and how they express life. And I say that to say this. It's not as unique as people think it is.
Right.
And that's important and it's beautiful. And it makes us all, I think, more connected. It creates an ease of acceptance because there's this sort of, well, if I'm going to be fucked up, at least it's my fucked up. And you're like, what? No, what you're processing, it would be limiting to put a word on it. It's this universal blip that occurred, and you chose to make that part of your identity or who you are, good or bad. And it's yours now, and it's mine. It is mine. And without it, I don't know who I am. And this is where people get stuck in destructive patterns and destructive relationships.
Yeah.
Because I know what this is and I can process it or deal with it or take it. I don't know what I am without it. And therefore, I am not at a place where I'm willing to face the fear. So I will stay with the comfort in abuse. And rarely will that person truly understand the choices they're making. Because it's, well, no, they are doing this to me. And it's like, well, you have chosen to allow the environment to exist where this is happening.
Right.
And I understand these are easier said than done comments where it's like, well, you've never been in an abusive. That's not, I've been in abusive situations. To me, not never abused anybody that I can think of intentionally. But people take things different ways. Sometimes hard truths can be abusive to people if they're not ready. But I was raised at an ashram with hippie parents and in a love commune bubble. Like, our goal was just expression of life, but it was truth. Our goal was truth. And truth is incredibly uncomfortable.
Tell me about it. That's why I have very few friends.
Oh yeah. Those of us that have sort of seen behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Have very few friends. A lot of acquaintances, a lot of beautiful, energetic beings that sort of like dance through our lives. But to maintain the level of awareness and acceptance and challenge it takes to like really face it all, it's exhausting. It's exhausting in a exciting, productive way, but it's exhausting where people go, yeah, I thought I wanted that. Yeah, I thought I could do that forever. I'm just gonna like slide into this. Like, I'm willing to take some shit and just like let it be there.
Yeah.
Because like, whoa. And there's a beautiful image of, I think it was Native American ideology where the buffalo and the cow. And if you look at these two herds, seemingly similar in shapes and sizes and weights and, you know, what they do all day. But when a thunderstorm comes, cows will walk away from it and inevitably become saturated and in an environment of just muck and filth and can't outrun the rain.
Right.
Where buffalo will run towards it, knowing that the sooner they get through it, there's sunny days and green pastures and life gets better, but you got to go through the shit first and directly before anything else. So there's a lot of cows that are going, I'm really good at walking.
That's fascinating.
I'm really good at just my backside's getting wet. This isn't that bad for a while. And it catches up with you.
Yeah.
The buffalo go, oh, let's fucking do this. And then just fucking give it and get to the other side. And they're like, well, that sucked for a couple minutes.
Right.
Look at all this new growth and tubules and leaves and sunshine. I mean, fresh water to drink, and you're not sitting under a rain cloud. So it's it's something that I've always liked, was challenging my threshold for discomfort, because I can be my own test subject. And if I can push my boundary as far as I can, I feel as though it helps me be more understanding and aware that of people who have done that, but also people who are not at the point yet where they are doing it, because I've been on both sides.
Right.
And I'm still going through a lot. I mean, I'm not, by no means am I under like museum glass, like perfect specimen, but I have practices and meditate and things that I do that I choose to sink my teeth into it and not let it go until we get this thing sorted out. Because it's not a, once I analyze it and understand it and face it, it's gone. That's not it either. I know to some extent, these things will always be there. But it's, again, this is why I truly believe that health is adaptation. It's how I adapt to that dictates my health. To think it's going to disappear would almost be more stressful.
Yeah.
To me, like, when people are like, I'm going to remove all stress from my life, I'm like, that sounds stressful. I don't think that's a possibility. I can remove some stress that is manageable,
right?
But there's some things that will always be there,
right?
And it's how you adapt to it,
how you react to it, right?
Absolutely.
Like we can react to it in a fight or flight way, right?
Right.
Which causes more stress, or we can have everything kind of sync together where we can process and work through things.
Yeah,
well, it doesn't really affect us.
Yeah, and I think the key component here is balance. And we live in such a hypo society that everything needs to be hyper exciting, hyper quick, feel hyper pleasurable. Everything's got to be hyper. And hypo is like destructive and bad and terrible. And it's like my old logo at the office, mine now is Montana with the LC. It's very simple, but my old logo was an Enzo circle, which is that representation of the balance of all things. And it was a practice by usually, I think it was Buddhist monks, and it was just every day, it was like a daily meditation. They do this paint swipe.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sure you know them, you've seen them. And that was my logo for chiropractic, because it was hyperactive system is destructive, hypoactive system is destructive. We want a balanced system. And I know I keep going back to like imagery and all this, but the tale of the two wolves, right? The dark and light wolf.
Which one do you feed?
Right. And so I've meditated on that concept a lot.
Yeah.
And because I've fed in my life both wolves at different times, big time. And I realized that the way I don't know, it's not a story, but the story ends is sort of the one you feed the most. And it kind of gives the impression that, well, you feed the positive light wolf, that's love and compassion and patience and dynamic energy, and you don't feed the fear, jealous, guilty, angry wolf, right? And I think the imagery from that is the more you feed one, the more it grows. The one you don't feed ultimately dies. And that never sat well with me. And it was my mentors would talk about this, all the two wolves. It was one of Sid Williams' favorite metaphors, is the wolf you feed. And it just, something never felt right about that. And I said, okay, is that productive to kill the fear, anger, jealousy? Because that's to imply that at some point that disappears. And until we go like full matrix, I guess, it is a limiting belief, but it's not a reality that all of those things disappear if you ignore them.
Right.
And that's the point.
You kind of have to feed them.
I think you can get to a place where it's incredibly minimized.
Yeah.
But to not feed it would imply to ignore it, which would imply death of these things. And what has always helped me the most through my process was not ignoring the dark wolf, but it was understanding what is the motivation for that wolf, what makes up that wolf,
right?
Facing that wolf and saying, look, I'm not against you. We're not against each other. You are necessary components to the balance of life. People who ignore fear, anger, jealousy, guilt, or don't have a mechanism to adapt to them,
right,
that's destructive. Those things exist. So finding ways of getting in their face, getting in the dark wolf's face and going, hey, motherfucker, I'm not going anywhere. And you're not either. We got to work together on this. Light wolf's just like, just having the time. It's easy to feed the light wolf. I say it's easy. I know a lot of people where it's a lot easier to feed the dark wolf. A lot easier to feed the dark wolf.
For sure.
For sure. For sure. But you gotta get in that wolf's face.
Yeah.
So you're not the fucking boss of me. I'm not the boss of you. We got to work together because neither of us are going anywhere. definitely not going anywhere if we keep fighting. We
Yeah.
can go somewhere together. But understanding that fear, jealousy, hatred, lust, the seven deadlies come up, and you go, okay, I understand that this is coming up because I have chosen to allow it to affect me in this way. I see something I like, dark wolf gets fed. No, it's, oh, why do I feel like I should have that and they shouldn't? Oh, because of a past experience or whatever, and go, acting on this, is that going to make either of our lives better? No. Do I have amazing things in my life? Can I achieve amazing things in my life? Do I have the capacity for amazingness? Yes. Great. So I just need to shut the fuck up and work harder towards achieving it for myself. And
Right.
that's the way I've chosen to do a lot of my own self-work for the last, however many, 2 decades.
It's funny to bring that back around where you were like, I forget how you worded it, but there's always stuff, right? There's always stuff. And I found in my experience where it was like individual stuff, working on my individual stuff. Then there's generational stuff, working on that stuff. And now it's more of a collective intention because we're always working on all the things, all the levels, right? No matter what we start with. But so there was a point I reached where I was like, oh, I'm like done all my, I've done all my work. I'm healed. I'm good to go. I'm living my best life. And then it's like, oh, this generational stuff, and then more generational stuff, and then past life stuff. And I was like, does it ever end? And then now collectives, I mean, at this point doing collective stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, of course. Like, let's go. I'm ready. But there was a time before that in the middle, of like past life stuff and like before doing more intentional collective stuff where I was like, why is this not ending? And then it's like, well, wait, do I have to die in order for it to end and to start over? And then eventually realizing like I had multiple deaths in this lifetime, and then realizing like we don't actually need a physical death, right, for any of it to resolve. But yeah, there was a point where I started getting like overwhelmed with like, oh my gosh, okay. And then realizing also that there was a part of me back around that time where I was like addicted to the suffering, because it was my identity. And it's like, well, now I'm in this job, like I'm working towards this, like this version of me that I know I'm here to do, right, to share with other people. And then I'm also doing it for myself. And then I feel like I became a buffalo, and I was like, okay, I'm running into it, super excited, let's go. And because at that point, I've realized what's on the other side of it every time, right? It's always expansion. And sometimes it's harder than others, and working through the stuff. And it's just as important, right, as feeling happy, as feeling angry and pissed off. Not really sure why I'm bringing that up, except for maybe bringing it back around of like generational stuff, multi-dimensional stuff, like people are holding onto in their physical bodies. And you also working with infants, and you do prenatal, right?
Yeah, postnatal infant care.
Yeah, so like
fertility care.
Do you, in your experience, have you seen these things show up in patients and then their children, like stuff? I don't know. I mean, however you want to interpret that. The same things coming up.
So
themes are
one of the funnier interactions I have with families is, especially if I know they're new to chiropractic, is we'll start talking about whatever's coming up from the exam or from the work we're doing with them, with their infant. And they'll often go back to, well, it's familial. It's my father had it. His father had it.
Such a great excuse, right?
His father. And I go, you know what else your family probably shared? A lack of chiropractic care. Like they all shared that too. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's not in your DNA per se. It's a familial connection in the sense of like, sure, if your great grandfather lived his whole life self-fixated, and your grandfather and your father and now your child, yes, you are going to see these expressions of life that are very similar. And this is on obviously the more top layer type stuff, right? If they have lived lives of unresolved, and we're in a generation now where we're like all about shedding husks and like exposing everything, and like we're just live wires.
Yeah.
I think sort of we've lost also an appreciation of the experiences of previous generations. That was not the case for many of our ancestors. There was no like, let's sit and really open this up and dig into it and get into it together. Like, that was not how it went. There was very specific roles. There was very, very designated roles in terms of men don't feel pain. Men don't feel this. Women do this. They don't feel it. It was just very like, oh, I'm sorry, like you complaining, like next to the guy in the steel mill next to you. Like everyone's life was, unless you were like some kind of investment banker living the good life. And even then, there was a whole world of torture and competition and deceit. But it was like your job is to just go to work, like just work. You got some shit? Yeah, everyone's got some shit. Just go to work.
Right.
And that's not our generation right now.
No.
We all have shit. We're all going to lay it all out. And if you are unaccepting of that, you're part of the problem, which is a whole other thing.
Right.
To some extent, and on the fringes of how expansive it's gotten. But we do now have the luxury of acceptance of communication, is that we can talk about things. We can open up. We can point some fingers, which I'm not a big fan of, but it's like, it's this sort of the process of saying this led to this, led to this, to this. We got to unpack all of it. Right. So, because I'm not able to get into everyone's past, like we were talking about earlier, I try to focus on the universal intelligence that whatever it's called, whatever happened, at that catalyst's core is the same energy. It's the same thing, whether it happened to you or someone in Zimbabwe. It's the same. It's the same catalyst.
That leads me into this other thing that I wanted to talk about is like, first of all, how are we born? How are we born with a fear of falling?
Yeah, right.
That doesn't,
instinctual nature. Well, and this is, and you look into cultural teachings and like tribal lineages where I just listened to this thing. They did a study where people that have never hunted, for instance, were able to look at animal tracks and remember them better than like abstract shapes with names. And you could look at these prints, and these people have never hunted. They have no real concept of hunting or tracking or anything. And they look at, this is a coyote, this is a raccoon, this is a turkey, and then they show them these crazy shapes with other names, and they go, good, write the names and shapes, and they're like, those abstract shapes meant nothing to these people. And all of a sudden, these people were like, oh yeah, it was a lion, and that was this, and that was this. And there's something deep within us, a primal instinct to survive, a primal instinct to, in my opinion, create community. I think love is a primal instinct. And people go, well, it was a brutal world out there. But sure, yeah, there was some, people were killing. It was brutal, but it was a survival mechanism. But I know that community and love and survival are ingrained in our being.
Right.
Those are all really uncomfortable things. Terribly uncomfortable, because we've been taught that they're uncomfortable, because there's vulnerability in all of that.
Yeah.
And vulnerability means you're weak, and weakness is bad. So therefore, we need to harden ourselves. And that's some dark bullshit.
Yeah.
As you go hard and you put up the walls and everyone's out to get you. And it's, so it because I understand my limitations, what I call limitations of matter. And we've been talking about limitations a lot. In my profession, I respect what's called limitations of matter.
Yeah.
I could be as ethereal of a being as I want. At some point, this thing fucking expires. And my energy load.
Well, does it?
This rots away. This outside rots away.
I haven't.
We feed worms at some point. The outside shell. I would love to hear more about that side of where you're coming from because it's fascinating. But what I mean is
yogis that are documented for living hundreds of years.
Great.
Proof.
Great.
And I mean, we're
It's not.
Maybe we just can't see.
Sure.
Because they're on a different dimension that we are limiting ourselves.
That exists forever. I'm talking about the fleshy.
I know, but maybe those people
are fleshy meat sacks in another plane.
Yeah, another plane of existence that have lived here forever since whenever they descended.
Yeah.
And are laughing their asses off at us and being like, "You guys think that you die? Oh."
Okay. This is good. I'm going to reframe what I was going to say. Let me reframe. This is perfect. I appreciate you exposing that. Because I'm still struggling with limitations of matter.
Yeah.
That I have not ascended to a point yet where my energetic carry capacity and physical capacity is infinite to my perceived and achieved abilities.
Love it.
Is that better?
Yes.
It actually felt really good to say. Because of that, because of my struggles with limitations of matter, rather than, to me, exhausting my energetic carry capacity with, okay, I'm going to tap into your specific generational lineage and what led you to where you are, and then hers and his and theirs and theirs and try to like organize each one by family. I've gone, what can I do that's the greatest good to the most amount of people?
Yeah.
And if trauma is trauma, it's just how you choose to adapt to it or what lens you view it through.
Right.
Or what shape it takes for you. That's not my responsibility or concern. My responsibility is channeling through my work the core of what trauma is.
Yeah.
It can take any shape, form, feeling, essence for a person, but I've chosen to protect my energy, which is a huge thing for healers. And when I first started, I was not good at it. And it was an energy healer that was like, dude, it looks like you have like boat anchors hanging off. He was after a long day with patients. I was like, well, yeah, she was going through this and he did this. And she's like, I'm sorry, you're allowing them to just give you their shit and you're going to carry it with you for the rest of your life?
Yeah.
And it just like a light bulb, when I got struck by lightning. And I said, what do I do? She said, every morning, you're going to strap armor onto your body, just energetic armor, not aggressive armor, not I'm going to fight you armor, but just creating a bit of a buffer where you can give completely without giving a piece of yourself away. And you can receive completely without taking anything with you. That's that hollow vessel. It's just a conduit, goes straight to the universe to be reorganized. That's what I teach
my students.
Yeah, to be reorganized. And so from that day forward, I do a few really silly things that work for me, and people can do them any way they want.
Yeah.
But I do what I call etch-a-sketch my mind.
So there are some generations that don't know what an etch-a-sketch is.
Oh, for the kids out there. By kids, I mean like 21 and younger. For the kids out there, an etch-a-sketch was this wonderful toy of like kinetic sand in a red picture frame with two dials, and you could draw lines and squiggles, and some people would do amazing portraits with it. But it was like a very fun, simple, mindless toy. But when you were done with your masterpiece, you just shook the heck out of it, and it reorganized the sand to a blank slate. So if I catch myself holding onto people's shit, I etch-a-sketch my mind, and I will go, oh, excuse me, I need to check something in my office, and I'll go back there and I go, and I just let the sand reorganize. Blank slate. So I'll do that. and I literally call it Etch a Sketch My Mind. I just go back
That's
there and do it.
great.
I do doorway sieves or mesh screens. I visualize a fine mesh sieve or screen,
Yeah.
and each one of my adjusting bays, my back office, any doorway. You do this anywhere. You can imagine a doorway.
Yeah.
I will walk through it, and that mesh screen is so fine that it just purifies the system. All the junk stays. I do it when I walk into the office, so I don't bring shit into the office. I do it when I leave each room, so I don't bring anything to the next room.
Yeah.
I do it when I leave, so I don't bring it home to my family
Yeah.
or for myself. So I'll just mesh myself as often as I can. You can't overdo it. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
You can't overdo
it.
it. And the one is when I start to get dark wolfed and I get aggravated, angry, there's something that I just can't adapt to or release. I French press my body
Awesome.
and my mind, my psyche.
Do you drink
my
it
being.
often?
I integrate it into my, it energizes me.
Okay.
But what it is I'll picture from throughout my entire system in an energetic bubble around me, swirling coffee grounds of anger and crankiness and jealous, whatever it is.
Yeah.
The 7 deadlies, just let it swirl. And I start at the top and I push with a force where I can feel the resistance under my hands.
I can already feel
Push,
it, like
push,
doing it.
feel, and you can literally feel it moving through your body.
Yeah.
And so I push it through my feet, out of my energetic bubble, into the ethers, and I'm left with the most delicious, exciting cup of energetic coffee there is. So
That's great.
yeah, I French press my body a lot. That's very
Have you
good.
ever thought about opening up a coffee shop?
I can open one here in the office, I guess. I should have like a energetic coffee bar where I'm like, oh, would you like a French press? And we'll just have it in the corner here. We'll just French press.
That's brilliant. That's great.
This is happening.
For what do you think? So obviously it feels like you're doing collective work on individuals, right? It's like this is awesome. What do you think is like, because we talked about either this earlier or before about the atlas and how there's people that only do that,
Yeah,
right? The upper cervical. So if there's a collective, what if you could only work on one person and it is the last person that you're adjusting and your job is done and it affects every single person, living thing with a nervous system on the planet, what is that collective consciousness energy that needs to be adjusted?
That's a very simple answer.
Okay.
Myself. I would work on myself. It's because no matter what I say right now, and I hope people get a lot out of this, and I hope we get a lot out of this. Whatever I say or do or believe or feel or ascertain from my practices, from the universe, whatever I'm even willing to accept that I don't know and will never understand to some extent, which is limiting, and one day I will understand it. It's all viewed through this. And for me to be as clear as possible, even if it meant never putting my hands on another person, I know that my work and the power I have goes beyond the physical adjustment. And I have no control over anyone else, nor should I. And for whatever reason, I have been given the opportunity to take care of one person completely.
Right.
And I think to respect that gift at its purest form would be taking care of myself, so I can express that as my gift to the universe before I could even think about helping anybody else.
Yeah, I think that I didn't even think about an answer of like what you would say, but I think you pretty much just nailed it, right?
Like I said, it's a simple answer.
Yeah, it always comes back to the self no matter what, right?
This could all be an illusion. This could all be a hologram. Like,
Yeah.
I think sometimes, I hope we're here together. I don't know for sure.
It can't.
But really, it's like, these manifestations, it's, have you ever met someone or had someone come into your life, and maybe, especially if it was fleeting, and you go, was that really a person that exists in this world? Like, do they have a house and make like toast in the morning? Like, I have a feeling that was a lesson in some kind of human form.
Right.
They don't go to TJ Maxx and pick out duvets. That's not a person.
Yeah.
That's a lesson person.
Yeah.
And I feel like they existed for me in this moment at this time for a reason. And that's it. And it's not a selfish, short-sighted, I'm the only one in the universe and everyone else is a figment of my imagination. And it's not all tinfoil hat like, well, this guy, I don't know if I'm going to a chiropractor, doesn't believe that anybody's really there. I'm talking about on the deeper level of.
Yeah, no, there's
at some level, it's this, and I hope that what I project. Same guy Sisyphus we talked about, I think, on the last recording.
Yeah.
In the fourth dimension and the inverted pyramid.
Yeah.
He would talk about your life is a movie projection of what's playing in here and in here.
Too. Yeah.
Right. So knowing that it's a projection of what's in here, it's how you view things. That's why the person I would work on is making sure my projection is as clear and productive as it can be.
Yeah. I totally just lost my train of thought of what I was going to say. Oh yeah. So Dolores Cannon, have you heard of her? She's a was a hypnotherapist.
No.
Decades. I've read a lot of her work, and there's an old video of her talking about what she calls the backdrop people. And it's exactly that concept. It's where these people are like the actors, like the backdrop people of like a play, right? They're there for, this is the scene, right?
So for you kids out there, this would be called an NPC. This is a non-playable character in one of the video games that you spend a lot of time playing. It's someone who fills the background and maybe has interjection with your storyline, but was created for a specific purpose to further or inhibit your storyline.
Exactly.
For the kids out there.
Yeah.
It's called an NPC.
Yeah, I don't even know that, and I have teenagers.
I know, my patients love video
Okay.
games.
Yeah, so she would call these people backdrop people, and if you attempted to interact with them, like, you would know that they're not actual people. And that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah,
like
that's
we can
wild.
talk about different, like, I believe that we all have different like levels of sparks of light.
Yeah.
So like, I don't think that they're necessarily soulless, but there's just a different like spark in them compared to like other people that are trying to like raise them up. But anyway, I did, after watching all this, and I was like, that's not real, and then I was like going out into the world, and I had tried to have a conversation with someone at the convenience store, and it was as if I wasn't even there. It was like, and I was like, oh yeah, don't you just love the universe? And I don't remember what I had said, but it was just like, didn't hear that, didn't see that, you are not anyone that I can interact with. And I was like, whoa. And of course, once you are aware of something, you can kind of start seeing like your whole perspective changes, right? But yeah, I think that's
it's a good backdrop.
Backdrop people.
I think the universe is constantly testing us to see if we're capable of achieving more or taking on more responsibility for the universe. And I teach this to a lot of the students I work with, that, sure, you could be a great adjuster, you can have the right mentality, you can be a rock star, absolutely rock star, and you visualize an office full of patients, and even maybe you took over an office, so you already have patients. The universe will provide what you can handle, right? But it's testing to see if you can handle it. So when people are like, I don't get it, I'm doing the right things, I'm handing out the flyers, I'm going to meetings, and I'm like, where's the new patient? What? And you start to dig and say, okay, well, when you're with a patient, what are you thinking about?
Mm-hmm.
That I should be busier. Yeah, the universe is not going to bestow its children upon you if you're like more me, greed, distractions. It's going to go, as the universe created this beautiful being, am I going to send them to you if you're distracted and thinking about everything else? Probably not.
Right.
So clear your mind. And, you'll see new patients start coming in. And you can translate patience to whatever it is you're trying to achieve in this world, but for me, it's patience, right? Or the opportunity to be with patients. And then it's like, okay, well, when you're with a patient, now that you're clear, what are you talking about? Well, they had something for dinner or the sport or whatever. You go, okay, yeah, great. So you're now distracted you're not educating patients. They're not going to refer people and they don't understand why they're there. I love to ask my patients, why are you here? Especially years in. I've had patients that have been with me for years. I go, why are you here?
Yeah.
7 years in.
Yeah.
And if they go, oh, I don't know. I guess I felt better and just kept coming. I sit them down and go, we got to change that. That's on me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that. And they're like, why? It's been great. I go, no, if you don't know why you're here, other than I told you to keep coming in, like that's a problem. Also, when you talk about chiropractic, you're going to go, oh, you see chiropractic, why? I don't know. I went and felt good. I just kind of keep going. Like that doesn't teach anybody anything.
Right.
So I'll ask them, why are you here? So we can keep educating people.
Yeah.
And I want them to understand, because if they go, you know what? I don't know. Bye. That's on me. That's not on them. That's a me thing. I should be the educator. Doctor, I believe, comes from the root words. It's like teacher or educator, right?
Mm.
So I should be educating better. If my initial intake is 45 minutes of talking and ego fluffing and nonsense, for one, you'll never see the volume maybe you think you should see, because you have so much time that you're in your space.
Yeah.
And if you're taking 45 minutes per person, you're not going to see 400 people or 500 or whatever you want. So it's like, pare that down to like the 4 big questions, right? It's like, did you find it? Can you fix it? How long? How much? It's like, that's what deep down inside all patients ultimately want to know. And this is more of a technical understanding of what we do.
Right.
But it's like, boil it down to some absolute truths that everyone really has in mind. And then the universe starts going, okay, they're very clear with their communication. They found it, they can fix it. They know how long it's going to take. They know, and what costs is sort of the superfluous one. Because like I said, we do sliding scale, we trade, we do everything. I just want to see people. But it's like, okay, he's clear-minded, he's educated, and I keep saying humble, obedient, and aware. The Sid Williams created the dynamic essential. And this conference is still called the dynamic essentials. And it's when a person becomes humble, obedient, and aware to the voice of God within, or the will of God within. So you become humble, obedient, and aware to the voice within. Universe goes, oh yeah, I'll kick you a couple more people. And then before you know it, your only option is to be in that flow, because you've built a thing where so many people rely on you being at your clearest, purest form.
Right.
That like, it takes me forever to go to sleep. I have to wind my brain down, and I don't hold on to other people's stuff. I just like to be prepared, and I start to analyze every option of everything. How could this go about the day tomorrow? What I just analyze. I just want to see the whole picture.
Yeah.
So, which maybe is not the most productive thing in the world, but it's what I do. And I'll go to sleep at 1, 2 in the morning. I'm up at like 5:45, 6. This was since high school. And so once I would open my eyes, my brain goes, your sole purpose, you were put in this plane to serve people. Get to work. And that is it. I would love to sleep in. Maybe I don't know. I've never done I sleep in. I'd like to get a workout in the morning. I'd like to have a cup of it. My brain goes, you are now conscious in this realm.
Yeah.
The one thing you're good at is detecting, analyzing, correcting interference. So at these ashrams I grew up at, I had a spiritual baby name, kind of like a communion or something like this. And
Yeah.
I was named Ganesh by
Aw.
Guru Mai, who traveled with Baba Muktananda and these amazing gurus. And Ganesh was the remover of obstacles. So I thought it was fascinating that it was Ganesh on September 18th. It was like, it was leading to this moment. But it was like, now that you for whatever reason have been blessed with the abundance in your life to be this, because there's other things I could have been.
Yeah.
And other struggles and challenges that I could be going through. No doubt about that. I'm always humble, obedient, and aware to that, and appreciative of my ability to serve. So that's my day. It's not Monday, it's not Tuesday, it's not Saturday. It's are you capable, or do you have the capacity to serve today? Yes. Then what are you doing sitting around?